Yeah, because we talked just a minute ago about a partnership between the governor and our senior senator and our delegation, particularly as it relates to public lands. And I think it'd be important to hear from Mike exactly how important is that and where he thinks that kind of relationship could go. If we have a reelected President Trump, if we have a strong relationship between the governor's office and our senior senator, what conceivably could we expect to have happen on some of these issues, like the Antiquities Act, like regaining ownership of public lands? People have talked about it forever, but we have seen no movement or very little movement beyond that around monuments. So Mike, what conceivably could we expect in the years ahead with the right kind of partnership?
Look, with the right kind of partnership between the governor's mansion and those working in Washington, D.C., including at the Capitol and the White House, there's a lot that we could accomplish. I learned an enormous amount while working for you, John, about public lands. In fact, Jon Huntsman was kind of an early pioneer in the push for reform of federal public lands management. When I went to work for him, I developed a whole new vocabulary involving RS 2477 roads, involving the Antiquities Act, involving
how many maps did we have laid out on our desk every day?
More than I can possibly count. Yeah, I mean, we're talking about thousands of maps that we looked at. And Governor Huntsman was an early pioneer in pushing toward aggressive litigation of the state's interests in those roads. 2/3 of our land in the state of Utah is owned by the federal government. That makes things really, really difficult for us when we have to get a mother may I anytime we want to access that land. The fact is that we are a public land state. I, along with Jon Huntsman, hope and expect and believe that we can and we should and we will continue to be a public lands state. But that doesn't mean that 2/3 of it needs to be owned and controlled by the federal government. Nor does that mean that when that happens that way, that there won't be real significant problems with doing that. It's one of the reasons why we elect Jon Huntsman as governor. In addition to pushing for legislation that would increase things, the PILT payment dedicated to the state, but also push toward transfer of management authority and in some cases ownership toward the state. Push for reform legislation to legislation like the Recreation and Public Purposes Act, which already allows the transfer of certain amounts of federal public land to occur to states for certain public purposes. I'd love to see that expanded to include options to provide for affordable housing in public land states like Utah. It'd be great to have a governor in the governor's mansion once again who would be willing and eager to discuss the fact that in our statehood enabling legislation passed by Congress before we became a state, there was at least an implicit understanding, if not a promise, that in time, garden variety federal public land within the state's borders, and I'm not talking here about national parks or about declared wilderness or national recreation areas. I'm talking here about your garden variety BLM public land. There's no reason why all that needs to be in the hands of the federal government and being managed by someone thousands of miles from those affected by this land. This ends up affecting Utah's poor and middle class and its public education system more than anyone else. Jon Huntsman understands these principles. He's willing to fight for them. With him in the governor's mansion and with me representing you in Washington, there's a lot we can do to put control of those public lands back in the hands of Utahns.
Mike, Lee, thank you for your time and participating and for your terrific public service representing our great state. Good luck with President Trump's task force on economic reopening. May it happen sooner rather than later. I think I probably speak for everybody in that regard. My thanks to Michelle Kafusi for being on the line with us as well. And to all delegates, I know you've got serious business ahead. Thank you for giving us a little bit of your evening. Write in to us, Jon, Jon, at huntsman2020.com if you would like to talk about any of these issues. I've had the good fortune of being able to talk to many of you by phone personally. I always enjoy doing that as well. Thank you for what you're doing, and thank you for your service during this most extraordinary moment in our state and our nation's history. Thanks to one and all. May God bless the great state of Utah. Have a good evening.
I'm Jon Huntsman, and I approve this message.